Hi, everyone, and welcome to Dear Katie, the podcast that amplifies courageous voices and real stories of resilience, healing, and hope after trauma. Katie Koestner was the first woman to speak out publicly as a survivor of date rape. In the early 1990s, she appeared on the cover of Time magazine, sparking a nationwide conversation about the realities of sexual violence. She is the founder of the Take Back the Night Foundation and the host of the Dear Katie podcast. Inspired by the many letters Katie has received over the last 20 years, each week, Katie interviews survivors, healers, and experts to honor their stories and explore the many paths to healing and hope. Before we begin, please know, many episodes of Dear Katie cover sensitive topics related to sexual violence, trauma, and recovery. Listen with care and take the space that you need to take care of yourself. Your well-being is what matters most. Now, let's join Katie and today's guest for a conversation that matters.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Dear Katie podcast. As you all know, I'm Katie Koestner, the founder of the Take Back the Night Foundation. I myself am a survivor, was on the cover of Time magazine back a long time ago at age 18 as the first person to really speak out nationally and publicly as the victim of date rape. And I always tell our listeners, we are so delighted that you continue on this healing journey with us. Each and every one of the guests features so many new ideas or modalities to heal. It could be reading a book, it could be yoga, it could be new kinds of therapies. So please always use excellent, good care of, your time with us. If you need to take a break, push pause, don't even worry. We're not going anywhere. We will be ready to continue when you get back. I think all of you are going to find my guest today so interesting. She is quite the writer, amongst many other talents. So I'm going to just tell you all a little bit about Jeannie, and then we'll learn a lot more from Jeannie herself. So Jeannie Vanasco is the author of the memoirs, Things We Didn't Talk About When I Was a Girl, which was named a New York Times Editor's Choice and a Best Book of 2019 by Time, Esquire, Kirkus, among others, and The Glass Eye, which poets and writers called one of the best 5 literary nonfiction debuts of 2017. Her third book is called A Silent Treatment, and it will be published in the fall of 2025, coming up shortly. Born and raised in Sandusky, Ohio, she lives now in Baltimore, Maryland, and is Associate Professor of English at Towson University. So welcome, Jeannie. I'm so glad you're here. I know you had a little cough, but even the best of us fall guilty of getting colds every so often. But thank you for joining. So you grew up in Ohio, and what was that like? So did you have a whole big family? One of you? Like, what was growing up like for you?
Yeah, I was first, thank you so much for having me. I'm really happy to be here. I grew up in Sandusky, Ohio. I was the only child of my parents' marriage. My parents were much older, and my dad was 61, almost 62 when I was born, and my mom was 41, almost 42. So I was not expected. And I grew up in a medium-sized town and had a very close-knit circle of friends, which is kind of what plays into the book, of course. It was a pretty small family because my parents were so much older. So
nice. And were you a sports person, a music person, a literary all the way person?
I was.
Did you have any hobbies?
I was really into drama club and writing. I mean, I think it was writing. I know that's something a lot of writers say, like, ever since I can remember, I wanted to be a writer. But I do think it's strange. I was thinking back to when did I first fall in love with writing, and I don't know if you remember the Amelia Bedelia books.
Oh my goodness! Okay,
where I think that was those books. I think I read them. I don't know. I was in kindergarten or something, or encountered them, and it was the magic of language. Where I remember Amelia Bedelia. For people who don't know, she was a maid, cleaning woman, and the people she worked for, they might say, like, draw the drapes. And instead of opening them, she would get out a notebook and draw a picture of the drapes. And there was this misunderstanding of language. And I think that was really when I fell in love with writing. It was just, I like a lot of writers through reading.
That's great. So you're a writer and drama person, and you finished high school, and I assume it was like a public high school in Sandusky, Ohio.
Yes.
And then you went on, did you go to school in Maryland where you are now?
No. So after graduating high school, I went to Northwestern originally to study journalism. And I was the first person in my family to go to college. And actually my dad died about a month after I started college, and I had wanted to delay going because I wanted to be with him. He was sick, but my parents were very insistent that I go, and I had a full scholarship, and it was a big deal. So I left, and initially went there to study journalism, and then transitioned into creative writing, and just loved. It was like, magic being around. It's very strange to be a professor now, because I remember thinking of professors as these celebrities and really looking up to them. And
So you're studying, and what happens next?
Yeah. So I was still in close touch with my friends in Sandusky, one of whom is, I call him Mark in the book. He was my best friend for about...
Wait. Make sure, which book are we talking about?
Oh, I'm sorry. Things we didn't talk about when I was a girl.
When I was a girl. Okay.
Yeah. So Mark, I give him that. I don't use his real name in the book. He's the friend who sexually assaulted me. But when I went to Northwestern, obviously, like, my dad died, I go back home, I see my friends, and then I go back to school, because I was told I might lose my scholarships because some date had passed. So I couldn't take any time off, even if I wanted to. So it was a really hard time. And I remember Mark being a really good friend to me. I mean, we had become close friends my first year of high school. And then through that first year of college, into the second year, until the sexual assault happened. But he was someone who was really there for me throughout that experience of losing my dad, and just struggling to, like, being in a new place where I didn't know anyone and felt out of place, where it seemed like everyone...
Mark went to high school with you in Ohio.
Right. And he stayed in Ohio.
Mark, real life Mark.
Yes.
So he stayed... I'm sorry, I got confused. Did he go out to California with you to college?
Oh, no. So I went to Northwestern in Illinois. No, Mark stayed in Ohio and went to college there. A lot of my friends stayed in Ohio. Sorry, I was jumping ahead into the subject matter of things we didn't talk about.
Let's wait on the book, because now I guess our listeners and myself just pretend we know nothing. Okay, perfect. I know you're intimately familiar with the book and everything else, Jeannie, but I think we don't know. So this book is based on your real life?
Yes.
Things that happen.
Yes.
So it's your own memoir. And you wrote about it in this book.
Yes.
So that's the context. Things we didn't talk about is the book we're on right now, which is your real life story. So now I got it. So now you go from high school off to Northwestern, near Chicago, for anyone who doesn't know. Now I know where you are. And you're planning to major in English, I think you said?
Yeah. Well, journalism, I was in the journalism school originally, and then my senior year transferred into the English major. I increasingly was taking a lot of literature and creative writing classes.
So in the real life world, what happened to you? If you can share it that way, instead of through the book, share it with, like, a real teeny story.
Sure. As a writer, you're so inside the book, you get mixed up about, you start to look at your life in the context sometimes of...
We'll pretend the book hasn't been written yet. Hi, this is Katie Koestner, and I wanted to remind all of our listeners about the free National Sexual Assault Legal Hotline. We at Take Back the Night have assembled an incredible team of attorneys, trauma-informed, who truly believe survivors and want to support their journeys in healing and finding justice. The Get Justice hotline is 567-SHATTER, or feel free to fill out a form on the Take Back the Night website, share your story, let the attorneys know what's going on, and they will get back to you as soon as possible with all of your legal options. That is a service we are delighted to provide through Take Back the Night. We'll go back in time. I just finished you in a time capsule, and we're going all the way back to what year would it have been? You start college, and it's...
Yes, it was 2002.
202.
Yes.
2002.
And
you go off there,
yes.
and you're in a complex situation. You said your dad, who was older, is now ill.
Yes, and he had been ill when I was in high school, and I knew he was sick, but I didn't necessarily, I just didn't, it didn't register, of course, that he might die, even though of course, like it was there, but not there. And it seemed like such an impossible thing. He and I were extremely close because he was retired when I was born. And so I really grew up. I mean, he was there every day. Like, he was always present. The kind of dad who's like, braiding my hair before ballet recitals and, things very like building me toys, things like that. So we were extremely, extremely close. So it's 2002. My dad dies in November of 2002. Northwestern, school started about a month prior. So, I go to school. A month later, he dies. I come back to Sandusky to help my mom. And then I go back to school, and I'm having a really hard time adjusting, but I'm still trying to do really well in classes because I'm trying to maintain. I had a full scholarship. And some of the scholarships required, of course, a certain GPA. So I was under a lot of stress with that, and then would regularly be talking with my friends, such as my friends back in Sandusky. And then every day I was on the phone with my mom, checking in with her because she, of course, had a really hard time.
Right. I can imagine. And now she's all alone too.
Right.
You're off at college and your dad is deceased. Okay. That's what's going on. And then tell us about Mark and how you knew each other for a long time then.
Right. Yeah. We became close friends my first year in high school. I had transferred from a Catholic school to public high school. I've been begging my parents to let me transfer out of Catholic school. And so I met him there. We became close friends. He had a sister and a younger brother, and I became very good friends with them. And I very close with his parents. I was there all the time for study groups. Like, if you look at my high school yearbooks, a lot of the people who sign were, writing memories of our study groups. And one of them was like, I can't believe you planned that 8-hour study. I mean, like, that was who I was in high school.
And you planned an 8-hour study session?
Apparently, yes.
Okay, Jeannie, you are intense.
Yeah. So Mark was a really good support system for me. And I got through the first year of college, really became close with my professors. I want to say I had a harder time. I had friends with other students, but I was in a lot studying because, yes, I did 8-hour study. I was that person.
Were you involved with drama or like a sorority? Northwestern has a lot of Greeks.
No, I didn't. No, I didn't do the Greek system. I wasn't a part of that. Mm-hmm. I was very involved with the journalism there, like the school paper and things like that. And then I interned at the New York Times the spring of my first year of college, the Chicago bureau. I was working as like a research assistant. It was an internship.
Did you like it?
I did. I was I was researching weird things. Like, suddenly it's like, can you research cube-shaped Japanese watermelons? And I was like, sure. It was for a business reporter. And I really, that's what I loved about journalism was, I never knew what I was going to be learning next. So then I got through the first year of college, and I interned over the summer at a public radio station. And then I went back to Northwestern in the fall. This was 2003. And I think because it was the anniversary of my dad's death was approaching, I was, of course, increasing, it was really hitting me, and I was very worried about my mom. We would talk on the phone every day. If I couldn't get a hold of her, I was very nervous because she was crying a lot, and I felt bad that I was in states away. So it was winter break of my sophomore year. I never really went to parties that much, or if I did, I was the designated driver. And so I wasn't a drinker. And I think some friends, I say it was a party, but really it was a very small gathering of friends. And it was at Mark's, the apartment he shared with another friend. And I got drunk probably for the first time. And I remember thinking it would be fine because I was with friends. I knew everyone there really well. And I just remember a friend telling me, I remember, it's so hard. And this is the thing that I realized when trying to write about it, and why I ended up reaching out. I'm jumping ahead, but reaching out to Mark years later to confirm my memories is because I catch myself, and maybe part of it is having studied journalism of am I getting this right? Because if I get any little detail wrong, does that compromise the entire story? But I remember people saying, someone said that they should take me down to the basement. That was where Mark was, where his apartment was. Or his room was. They shared, I call it an apartment, they shared a house. It belonged to a friend's uncle. Mark and this friend and the friend's uncle lived there. And so Mark's room was in the basement. Someone suggested taking me down to the basement where I could sleep. I vaguely remember this. I vaguely remember people carrying me down stairs and putting me down in Mark's bed. I don't know. I woke up I was so shocked. I woke up to Mark with his fingers inside me, and I was so shocked. And I remember at some point I started crying, and he kept telling me, it's just a dream. It's just a dream.
Wow.
And
oh my goodness.
Yeah. And I knew it was, I knew it wasn't. And I had that feeling of, it's the same thing that happened to me with a high school teacher, a male teacher, where I had a high school teacher who touched me inappropriately. He had rubbed his hand up my thigh. I was I don't know. I think it was my sophomore year of high school or something like that. He was the newspaper advisor, and I'd started the school paper, and I didn't want to embarrass the teacher because I remember very quickly jumping up. I'm oh, I have a babysitting thing to do. I just remember having that same sensation of not wanting to embarrass Mark, or I don't know what it was, but I just stayed there crying. I guess I can't really explain it. I just froze. And then he started masturbating over me, and I was just frozen there, and I waited for him to finish. And then he collapsed in a corner or somewhere, and I ran upstairs, and I told a friend who was at the party, and she said, Jeannie, that's rape. And I said, no, it's not. No, it wasn't. And it was something he only used his fingers. And she said, it doesn't matter. And then the friend who lived with Mark, I remember him saying, I'm going to go beat him up. And I was like, please don't do that. Let's just leave it alone. And I don't remember how I got home the next day, but I remember just being really shocked hearing a friend use that word. And for a long time, I wouldn't have used that word. When I was in my 20s, I was raped, and I would have no trouble using that word, attaching it to it. And it was the same sort of thing. I was kind of passed out, and I wake up, but this instance with Mark, I don't know what it was. I think it was where I was unable to use the word. I think it was because I was thinking so much about his body and what part he used. I wasn't thinking anything about my body. It was as if it didn't matter. It was it was all about him. And it took me a very long time until I was doing research when I decided to write about it, reading about the FBI's revised definition of rape, which came about, I meant to look at this beforehand. I forget what year it was. But the FBI revised the definition of rape to include that it could be that it didn't have to be.
Vaginal penetration with any object by anyone, however slight.
Yes, yes, exactly. Yes, that.
Hey everybody, it's Katie Koestner. Just a quick interruption. We want you to know that there is an entire shop full of cool merch on the Take Back the Night website to support your own healing journey, that of someone you care about. There are t-shirts, there's bracelets, there's glow-in-the-dark stuff. There's all kinds of unique special edition from our artist series as well. So please take a look if it's a holiday or a special occasion or just a gift to yourself. Support Take Back the Night through your purchase. And Jeannie, you're doing great. I know it seems so interesting to listen to you because you're such an excellent writer, and you're writing about your own self. And I think I'm just thinking out loud. It's like when I go get on a stage, that's a different, I'm not writing it down exactly, but I'm talking about it audibly, which is what we're doing together right now. And it's all these different ways to describe and process what happened as a survivor. They hit us in different ways, right? And some of it's really, really hard to do for each of us differently, right? Like you've always loved the language, the words on the paper, right? Or the typed words now. And I'm really appreciative that you're opening up the verbal part of you to talk about it, because you're helping our listeners who don't know where to even start with the verbal part, right? So thank you. I just wanted to stop and say thank you. And the other thought I had was, it just struck me. I remember when the FBI changed the definition, and how weird is it for me when my dad, who hung up on me when I told him the first week it happened in college to me too. And he is an FBI agent, and the laws and policies were the ones that I was changing back then. But there's no chance. I remember when that happened, because I was like, well, my dad certainly didn't make that happen. And he could have. That could have been something he took on. But, everyone processes stuff differently. And, ironically, I would say I lost a big chunk of my dad. I mean, he is still alive now, but it's never been the same. And it's really harmful and hurtful, always. But I just wanted to give you a moment to take a big breath and be good to yourself while we're talking, because I can tell it's really hard, and I want you to go at the pace you feel comfortable. But there something, you're so interesting because you sneak in these zinger sentences and then keep going without even missing a beat. Because I think you slipped and you got raped again later in your 20s, but you just I was like, that car went by so fast, we didn't even catch our breath. You just kept going. So it's really like interesting to like talk with you about this. But let's get back to the Mark situation, because I also wanted to say, I thought it was gorgeous the way you put it too. You were thinking so much about his body and not yours. And so many of our listeners and our survivors who have come along through Take Back the Night, they say, I didn't think that it was rape either, or I didn't know I was sexually assaulted. It's like we who are survivors, oftentimes it's like, oh my gosh, that is what happened to me. And whether it's fingers or a penis, it's still a foreign object inside of your very private part. I think some people might think that's not as bad. I'm like, yes, it is. It's all bad, So I just wanted you to hear, we're getting to know each other for the first time, really. And even though it's like on a podcast, it's to me, the podcast is just a conversation with each person. I love that. It's not therapy. It's just a like hang out, let's think together and honor where you are. And you can learn anything you want from me too. So it's mutual admiration club, right? Like it's really hard to do what you're doing, and it's hard for our listeners to listen in too. So anyway, I hope that wasn't too long of a pause, and it was, you stopped at a point where I think it's important because so you have this experience, and it also sounds like your friends, they could have, number one, intervened. I have no idea like how they feel today about what happened, but let's talk about the aftermath.
Yeah.
What happens that there's this night, and then you wake up, and what happens next?
Yeah, I don't remember how I got home. Someone drove me, and I remember I started to tell my mom, and I think she was changing the sheets on the bed, and I had gone in and I'd said, something happened at the party. And I think I said it in a way that indicated something serious happened. Okay. And this was very much unlike my mom. So unlike my mom. It's actually not in the book because I thought it would derail, and that's more of like a craft thing. But she had said, well, were you drinking? And I had been. And I didn't say anything. And this was her. It was very out of character for her. She was still grieving. And I can't really explain, of course, I don't know why she would have reacted like that, except, people, we often behave out of character. And those are sometimes the interesting moments for writers to write about. But so I didn't tell anyone else. And when I had to, so then I was also, prior to this, around this time, I think I had been starting to exhibit signs of bipolar. I didn't know what that was. Later, doctors said they thought maybe my dad's death had triggered it. But I was experiencing these racing thoughts and full of energy and suddenly wanting to go running in the middle of the night. But then I would also have like these periods of profound depression and then these really uncomfortable mixed states. And I remember going, a professor had, I guess, referred me to, I had like I don't know if it was like a kind of a breakdown during an exam at school. I just left the room. I was too overwhelmed, and I went outside and it was snowing, and I was just like, the TA came out to see if I was okay. It was an exam. I remember it was it was a history exam. And I said, please just fail me. And she's like, what? I said, just, I can't go back in. I cannot think straight. Just please fail me. And she said, let's walk to the professor's office. So she did. So we went there, and probably after listening to me, because I was also full of ideas and I clearly could answer everything that would have been on the exam, that was on the exam. But I just couldn't organize my thoughts in writing for these essays, the Blue Book essays.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for continuing to take the journey on the Dear Survivor podcast. A quick note, we are 100% volunteer at the podcast and at Take Back the Night. Your donations, your generosity helps us do what we do on such a shoestring budget. And we would be so grateful if this show is helping you through your journey and you are passing it along to others you care about. Please visit the Take Back the Night website and donate and support our cause and our mission to end sexual violence and support survivors. Thank you.
And he must have referred me to health services, and I would have to go to these campus therapy sessions. And there was the usual question of like, have you been sexually assaulted? And I would either mark no, or when I was asked, I remember once saying like, yeah, but that's not what I'm here for. And I was always brushing it aside and emphasizing like, I lost my dad. That is the most important thing. Like the other thing, it's not a big deal. And I also was I think I dismissed it because again, I was thinking about his body. I was thinking about these cliched portrayals of rape that I had, consumed as a viewer of films or a reader of books, like the stranger, whomever, not the acquaintance, right? Or the friend or, and so on. And so I was having a really hard time. And then Mark and we tried, I'm remembering now, he called to apologize, or I called him. He couldn't remember which one of us called. So like years later, right, I talked with him. But, and I remember when he said he was sorry, I said, oh, it's fine. Just read Franny and Zooey. That's my J.D. Salinger's Franny and Zooey. I was like, that's my favorite book. Just read that. And then we'll talk about it. I don't know why. I was like, just read a book. I mean, that's a sign, I guess, maybe a future professor. But it's so strange that to me, looking back, that I would have behaved in all of these different ways. And I think that is why it interested me to write about, is because I couldn't give language to it. I know I brushed by it very quickly that in my 20s, I was raped by a friend, but that I knew what to call it, and it was harmful, and I still think about it. And I know this person now occupies a very, important position actually in sort of my field. But I knew what to call that. But with what happened with Mark, we had been friends for so long, and I just didn't have the language for it. So then as a writer, when I don't have the language for something, it makes me want to write about it. Or if I have confused thoughts if I'm confused about something, then I want to write about it because it's more interesting to me, because there is the prospect of failing, of like something being very difficult, but there's that challenge of figuring it out. And I think on another level of writing about it, it did allow me to distance myself, for better or worse. Some might say that was unhealthy, but I could distance myself from the events and really make sense of them in a way that was helpful to me. And I think that reaching out to him, apologies for skipping ahead, but reaching out to him so many years later and him agreeing to go on the record and to let me record our conversations, and having his admission was really helpful, because for a long time, I just didn't know if how I felt about everything was, if it was okay, if I was doing if I was, is this acceptable? And it's embarrassing to say that. see my students are much more, a lot of times the ones I encounter, they speak so much more confidently than I did, or feel much more confident about their experiences. Sometimes, other times I have a lot of students who do write about sexual assault, and I guess it is a mix, but I don't know. There was just the confusion about what happened with Mark and what to call it. That was what was so upsetting. One of the things that was so upsetting to me, and maybe I didn't want to label it rape because I wanted to stay friends.
And so I guess for our listeners who might delve into the book, what should they be looking for? Like, what was your hope that the reader would get out of the book?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's it might be a very, obviously a very difficult book for some people to read. So I've heard from people that it was helpful to see their experience there. I've heard from a lot of readers that they had a very similar experience, either in not knowing what to call it, or having it having been sexually assaulted by a friend. But I'm not sure if I can say like what I want readers to take from it per se, but I've heard that people have found it helpful just to see an experience that was similar to their own, but to have some had said it kind of gave them closure to see someone admitting to what they had done, because something Mark had said was, I knew what I was doing was wrong while I was doing it, and I did it anyway. And a lot of readers have said that was valuable to them.
Mm-hmm. That sounds great. Really helpful to have closure, even if it's vicariously through you, Jeannie. That's a nice idea. Well, I guess maybe when we head for the next, let's talk about the new book coming out. What's that all about, and what precipitated the new idea?
Yeah. So again, it goes back to not having the language for something. So this book, A Silent Treatment, my mom and I are very close. She now lives, spoiler to the book, she now lives directly across the street from me, but she lived with me for more than 5 years after we turned part of our house in Baltimore into an apartment for her. My partner and I, she was feeling very lonely in Ohio, so she moved here. And my mom isn't great at expressing her emotions sometimes, and so she uses the silent treatment. And her longest period of silence went for 6 months, and that was during the pandemic. So we don't live in a mansion. This is like a 1,200 square foot semi-detached house, and she didn't speak to me for 6 months. And it always had to do with some perceived slight. And she knows about the book. In fact, she said, I think you should write about it. It's very interesting. And because I had been telling her, I want to write a book for and about you. And she's like, you can't just write about me. That wouldn't be interesting. A book needs conflict. And she said, if I didn't want you to write about it, I shouldn't have done it. She's very mature in that way. And the book actually I do address what I didn't include in the second book. What I felt too guilty to include was that my mom was kind of dismissive when I first came to her about the assault. That is in this. And because I felt like this book, A Silent Treatment, it's about the silent treatment it is a form of abuse, and it's very painful, but it's also about her and her life story. And it's sorry, I've lost the thread of what I was.
That's okay. So the new book that's coming out this fall will be about her.
Her use of the silent treatment, and because it examines her in depth, I felt like I could include that detail of her saying, well, were you drinking? Because I worry that if I included it in the other book, I would have to include more of her character, because it was her behaving so out of character that to include it would have actually been, I thought it would have lacked truth, because it would have given it wouldn't have given a rich portrait of who she is. the reader only would have encountered her behaving that way. And that is not who she normally was to me.
Got it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jeannie. Well, I mean, my goodness, I feel like it was a lot, and I'm so glad that you shared all that you did. And I like that we were talking about it through you instead of just the book. Not that the book's not going to be great, but I kind of like the authenticity and hearing you as the writer and the actual person struggling with, how do I capture this and what do I write? And even you talking about like how hard it was to remember all the details and the way you struggled with the facts, like news reporter style. It was just fascinating to hear you think out loud, if you will, Jeannie. It's just really amazing. And I'm sure your students at Towson just adore you and love, what you can offer them through your classes. So I hope our listeners will pick up, any one of your upcoming book, your previous 2 books, and learn more about your personal story and your healing journey. Is there anything else we always try and wrap up with like maybe something you'd like to share to give strength and courage to our listeners that has really helped you with maybe the writing process itself was your healing journey, but I'm sure it's more than that. So what else would you like to close with?
Well, actually, I do think writing, it's interesting. When I was a student, I remember often hearing like writing is not therapy, but I do think that, Virginia, a lot of great writers have written about writing as being very therapeutic. And that is something I recommend. The thing I would say, there have been these studies into what makes therapeutic writing. And I also think it makes for good writing. There's this scholar, James Pennebaker, and he's done studies, and it was therapeutic writing results from writing not strictly about events and not strictly about feelings, but about linking feelings to events. And they find that when people do that, they come away with closure, whatever that may mean for the person, but they feel better. And I would say, I think that also makes for better writing. So I do think writing about our experiences is very valuable. So that is what I would leave people with, is, that your words matter, and that there are ways to go about writing, and that can be therapeutic and literary.
Nice. And I think, some will take you up on that offer, that recommendation for sure, Jeannie. And clearly, you are well regarded in the field. So I can't wait to put in show notes how to, find your books and read more about, how you expressed what you went through. So I'm so delighted to have you on the show. Anything closing otherwise?
No, it was great. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm so glad. I'm so glad you were well enough. You powered through, as I like to say. But again, just thank you, Jeannie. And for our listeners, thank you for continuing to take these very steps with us. And each and every one, I always say, just pull out one thing from what you heard today. And whether it's like going back and looking up FBI statistics and data, just if you're more in that mindset, like, oh, what is the exact definition? It's out there. You can find it quickly. If you're ready to pick up one of Jeannie's books and put it as a daily read, I recommend, obviously, anything that you think is going to continue. The legal support hotline is alive and thriving. We have just, I don't know when this episode will launch, but we are getting many, many calls and helping many, many people with the legal support hotline. So it is free, 100%. There is never any obligation. You can always change your mind, but the lawyers, the people behind it, are so supportive and trauma informed and so empowering in that regard if you want to seek help. Otherwise, until the next week, please continue to do great self-care. Take care. Thank you again, everybody, for joining another episode of the Dear Katie podcast. I hope very much you found today's episode helpful, empowering, and a way to take another step in that long journey toward healing and supporting those we care about, learning about sexual violence prevention, and also survivor support. For those of you who don't know, again, the Take Back the Night website has tons of great resources, books, self-care options, cool merch. If you're feeling like you need a wearable, we have great t-shirts. Of course, we would love it if you follow along on our free newsletter with news and events going on around the country and even around the globe. And finally, don't forget to like us and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. You'll find our entire community popping up here and there, and recaps of our podcast episodes as well. So together we shatter the silence, and together we end the violence. Take care.